Thank you.
Tickets go on sale already.
I'm sponsoring. I'm doing something already on it. Thanks. See you guys in September. It's at the fall, September, right?
Yeah.
September. Yep, we'll be there.
All right, next on the agenda, we'll go back to our regular order, would be the zoning department. Darrell?
Good evening. The monthly report for the month of May for zoning. We continue to be up on permits issued for the month and the year to date. If you could scroll down a little bit, Scott. Yeah, great. On single-family dwelling permits, we are slightly down from last year, which I've got to admit I'm a little bit surprised. I don't really have an explanation of why that is. Keep hoping that's going to pick up. Zoning complaints, those continue to be on the rise. Year to date, we've got 66 as opposed to 51 last year. On monthly meetings, the Board of Zoning Appeals heard a variance request for the new car wash that's coming in at Central and Central Park West. Zoning Commission did not have a meeting, they had nothing on the agenda. Project plan review, we reviewed 3 plans. 2 of them were for the shops at Franklin Place and another one for the radiation oncology addition renovation. This is the building down the street on, actually that address there on Alexis is incorrect. It's on Holland, Sylvania. It's a large pink building down the street. That's all I have for the monthly report. I have one resolution, 15069, authorization of abatement of vegetation and/or debris. Would like to make a couple changes to those addresses. 2 of them, the properties have been cut, 5738 Roberts and 5524 Elmer. So I would like to delete those. And I would like to add 1 property, and that's 4705 Vineyard. It's parcel 78-17831.
I'll offer resolution 15069, the abate of the properties at 4602 Sedalia, 5236 Janet, 4705 Vineyard.
Second. Okay, call the roll. Mr. Crandall?
Yes.
Mr. Genoway?
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Darrell.
That's all I have.
Thank you, Darrell. Next up is the fire department monthly report.
Good evening. You have in front of you the May monthly report. The first 2 pages are our statistics. We continue to increase slightly in our monthly runs. The second page, Scott, we have our traumatic injuries have increased a little bit. They're 41 towards the bottom of the page there. As the season changes and we get more people out and about on motorcycles and on bicycles and whatnot, our traumatic injuries have a tendency to increase a little bit. Page 4, our mutual aid incidents. During the month of May, we had 3 times that we didn't have any ambulances available and requested from Toledo once and from Springfield twice mutual aid to transport people to the hospital. Page 5 is our community risk reduction. There were 19 public education events during the month of May, 1 joint inspection with the state fire marshal, and the fire department installed 1 smoke detector for a hearing impaired individual. That's through a program that is offered through the state fire marshal's office. Chief Frederick also participated in the mock accident program on May 1st. That was for Northview. So did Chief Ram and myself, as well as some individuals that we had on the squads. And Deputy Chief Frederick also did some inspections at the after-school prom events. Building project plan reviews, community risk reduction. We had 9 plan reviews in the month of May, 8 license inspections for preschools, daycare facilities, or home inspection for adoption and foster care. We had 6 final acceptance tests for installed or upgrade of fire protection systems. Page 6, our training bureau. The first week in May, we conducted pre-plans. We had a walkthrough pre-plan at the facility at 5360 Haroon Road. That's the new facility that is taking over for Lake Park when that comes down. It's a rehab facility. We like to get our crews in there as the building's being constructed so they can see what the building looks like and what the infrastructure is before we go ahead and all the drywall gets up. We also, the guys worked on SCBA, self-contained breathing apparatus competencies, and additional in-house training for our drug-free workplace, and also cyanide monitors. We have new cyanide monitor on the rig now that we can take into homes and test for cyanide. Cyanide is a gas given off with plastics and carpet and padding, carpet padding go ahead and burn. The next page is a continuation of our training. Captain Fry is a member of the National Fire Academy's Managing Officers Program. That's quite a feather in his cap. He goes down to the National Fire Academy, takes classes down there for to become a chief officer. Lieutenant Robin Zaletta and Lieutenant Jeremy Fritz also were at Bowling Green Fire School. They did the fire instructors course and fire officer 1 course. Sent 2 paramedics to the school also to take street smart engine operations, and then 1 firefighter paramedic, Kirk Wolf, went in and took the pump operations class in May at BG Fire School. Page 8 is our overtime. We do have an increase in overtime for training because we did a lot of training, sent a lot of people to the BG Fire School that month. That's May is the month that they do all that down there. And we had 150 hours of overtime for staffing due to minimum manning. And then we had 20 hours of overtime that we put in for the mock accident at Northview High School.
Chief, how's your overtime doing? I thought through May you were at 100,000, about 50% of your budget.
I'd have to look at it, Mr. Genowine.
I thought you were the chief, you should kind of know that.
Well, I didn't get a chance to look at the May one yet. I've been busy doing other things right now. So, but keep in mind that July and August we don't have any CE, so there'll be less overtime in July and August for our paramedics to go to CE classes. I was also asked by Mr. Crandall, if you could bring that up now, Scott, to do a levy update as to what we promised the people that we were going to do with the levy, what we've actually obtained with the levy. And this is just a summation of what we're at right now.
Thank you. Sorry. Thank you.
You'll see that the first one is reduced equipment inventory. We've successfully reduced our inventory as we promised from 21 vehicles to 17. Convert 1 part-time administrative assistant position to full-time. That's been completed. Hire 2 full-time firefighters. That's still pending. We haven't completed that yet. Cross-staff the truck and the engines at Station 3 and 4. That has been completed. We do that on a daily basis when those units are able to be in service. Replaced 3 support vehicles. Well, we replaced 1 chief's car and 1 air unit. I purchased an air unit from Lucas County EMS for $1. Updated it with the new air system for $9,000 and took care of some cosmetic issues for about $4,000. So we saved a substantial amount of money because the new air unit would be about $135,000. We still have the pickup truck to purchase. Our pickup truck is no longer in service. It's unsafe to drive. Replace engines. We currently are working towards specifications to replace an engine. We have a committee together. We're at the very end of our specification list. We are, I think, at the point where we can start looking at vendors. We would like to do it state spec so we don't have to go out to bid. Place a transport unit in service to supplement the private sector when they are unavailable. That is still pending. We haven't completed that yet. And set aside money to replace Tower 63. That's the truck at station number 63 that we're cross-staffing at this time. We started putting money aside for that in the 2015 budget. We're slated to replace that unit in 2021. So that's what we've accomplished so far with the promises that we made to the public last year when they passed the levy.
Chief, I've got a question for you. Have you had a chance to get back to the private sector and see how the delivery times have been and things that are, you know, we had that last year. How's, any thought on that?
We're compiling some of the stats right now.
Great.
For what we have in the first half of the year, because, you know, we're getting into the first 6 months of the year. We are finding that during certain hours of the day, between 9 o'clock and about 6, 7 o'clock in the evening, the privates don't have a lot of units available. So we're having to supplement with other departments coming in and giving us mutual aid contracts, or the people just decide to go by car.
Okay. So maybe it'd be a good chance, I don't know what your time would be, but maybe a chance to get the private sector back in for another conversation.
Sure.
If you're seeing a trend here that's not going the trend that, you know,
We'll do.
just do the numbers.
We'll stay on top of that.
Okay, I know you will.
Yeah.
Okay, great work on this.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you.
Mr. Chief, I'd like to comment. I understand our last KME engine.
Yes, sir. The last KME engine was inspected last Wednesday and Thursday by Al Hassifras.
I know that's been a frustrating thing for you. I appreciate your follow-up on that.
Yeah, they actually, it's the thank we should give to Chief Ram and Al, because they've been the ones going back and forth down there and putting up with them. But it was a breath of fresh air, as the chief told me, that it was, the inspection went very well, and we had nothing but good news when they called me saying that they were done and they're on their way home. So it should be here next week.
That wasn't a levy item, but that's been a follow-up item
Yep.
for you a long time. I appreciate your follow-up.
Yep. You're welcome.
Thank you, Chief. Next up is the Police Department with your monthly report.
Good evening. You have in front of you our monthly report for the month of May. Moving along, page 2, you'll see our calls received in dispatch. All those calls do total 7,963 total calls into dispatch. Page 3, you'll see we had 1,267 calls for service. And I won't go over all these numbers. I'll simply say that it's kind of an unusual trend, because calls for service were down, but in property damage accidents were down, but in citations, injury accidents, burglaries, robberies, domestic violences, assaults, identity thefts, OVIs, which is the new term for DUI, thefts, and all other reports were up in all of those, as you can see. I think we have to go a little bit longer in the year to see how it plays out. Some of the figures are pretty close. Identity theft is a little more than double, which, you know, with computers and such, I just look for that to continue to go up. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people who are victimized that way. Moving along to page 4, you'll see that we've been doing real well. We're still doing real well on our prisoner transport contract with the city. And we obviously have more transports than what we do assisting the city in our contract. We did incur a little bit of cost for that. You'll see about close to $500, but we're only year-to-date still at $760, and we received considerably more than that from the city for that contract. Page 5, case assignments for the detectives. Again, I won't go over all the numbers. You can see that 72 cases were assigned in May. They cleared 41 of those, leaving 31 outstanding, and they cleared an additional 16 cases for a total clearance of 57 for the month of May. Page 6, again, you can read it, but it was very, very slow. They're working on long-term cases with our detective that's on the DEA task force. Page 7, you'll see our crime map, the common type offenses, and yeah, it's in color up there, good. You know, obviously thefts are going to be the predominant one, and again, you know, so much is along Central Avenue, our business district there, and then some on Monroe Street. That clothing store up there, Gabe's, I think I've mentioned before, that we take a lot of people out of there too for thefts and such. Page 8, as far as our traffic and DUI arrests, again, you'll see, I don't know what we do without Central Avenue, quite frankly.
Everything is really concentrated, some on Monroe Street and such, but things are really concentrated along Central Avenue. And I guess that figures, I haven't checked with the county as far as where that ranks in volume, as far as traffic volume, but it's got to be up there in the top couple for sure, especially between Reynolds and McCord.
Isn't Central and Pennsylvania one of the most dangerous intersections in the county?
Yeah, and that's why they put up you saw what they've done to it it finally got done about a week ago. And actually already we had identified Sergeant Jankowski on midnights. When you're southbound on Holland, Sylvania, you come up to that boulevard or that curb right in the middle of the road. And don't ask me why, but they didn't mark it very well. They just put a sign. So right now, temporarily, they've got a couple of reflective cones out there and a little bigger sign, but I've talked to Kyle Warner and Ron Meyer with the county, and they're great to work with. They jump on stuff right away when we call them. And they're going to put some reflective signs out there. I suggested what we may do is reflective tape on the post like you see at the four-way stop at Brinton Centennial and such. That really lights up at night, and it's very helpful. So they'll be doing something like that. And strangely, the other directions aren't so much of a problem. But that sign on southbound Pennsylvania has been knocked over 3 times since they finished it. So I don't know if we got a lot of drunks down there or what's going on. But anyway, I'm sure the county will address that very, very quickly. Page 9. Again, there's not a whole lot there. Speed trailer, we're still not getting a lot of requests on, and hopefully you guys aren't either, as far as speeding violations in our neighborhoods. We did have it out there on Regents Park, and obviously we address those as they come in. And then we had some other activities too, as far as the Citizens Police Academy and wrapping that up, and some involvement. I might as well mention it now. I got a nice letter complimenting our community affairs officers. And one of our Citizens Patrol volunteers, he was at that, what did they call it, Spring Fling at Tam O'Shanter for the Northwest Ohio Office of Aging. And anyway, they really liked our presence there, and we're very pleased. Page 10, there's not a whole lot going on with K-9 now. I hope as the summer moves along here, we'll have more going on with that, although that officer is going on vacation here next week for a couple of weeks. But after that, hopefully things get going a little bit. And then something, I got a nice letter from a doctor and his wife on Whispering Oak, reference to kind of the thing we see, especially late summer, and I don't want to stereotype here too much, but with transients or gypsy type people or whatever, as far as promising work on the house or whatever, and then, taking the big down payment or whatever to buy the goods. Our Detective Bureau, specifically Sergeant Colwell, really took the ball and ran with this one. And it's a pretty lengthy letter here complimenting him and his persistence in following up on it. And the letter doesn't say how much, I didn't check with them, how much money they got back for these people, but they got all their money back. So obviously they were happy about that. And then that's all that I have. Okay?
Nice work, Chief.
Thank you.
You guys are getting busy. I think the heat's going to bring crazies out.
Oh, yeah, and storms are always fun too. As these storms roll in, it'll be interesting. Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. Next item on the agenda is under Administrator, and it's discussion on Sylvania Township Fire Department revised hiring policy. What I'd like to do is pass out the revised policy. Each one of you. And, I'm going to go over the highlights. I'll pass the highlight sheet out. I typed this myself. No, she's still.
When do we expect her back?
I think.
Thursday. And she's out, any of the township employees could put an out of office response, because I did email her today, and it would have been nice to know she wasn't in.
That's probably not a bad idea. Yeah,
I'm sure you do it at your
yeah,
workplace, Neil.
yeah, I'm good with that. Thank you.
Here's the highlights, which I'll go over.
Thank you.
As the trustees know, a few months ago, we started looking at our policy, and what we wanted to accomplish was to make sure that we had a fair and open policy for applicants for
Well,
the
let's
fire.
first start by saying it was brought to your attention that we have no minorities or females on our department.
Okay, let's, hey, John, with all due respect, let our administrator,
Well,
you're jumping already, let's slow down.
Well,
You got a respect for him?
thought he
Well, you know what, I'm the chairman here, so I'm
going
gonna tell you, Mr. Zeiler, please speak.
Okay.
I never said it was
Thank you.
myself. I said-
Let's not get started down this path already. Just let him-
Going down it.
He's a grown
So-
man, he's an adult, let him speak, and give him the courtesy to speak.
So, we went through our old policy, and I want to give Susan, I wish was here, because she did a lot of the yeoman's work on it, and we met with John Burrell many times, and the chief. What we did is we came up with a revised policy, which you have in front of you, and I'd like to highlight some of the changes, and any discussion you have, feel free to ask, and I'll answer after I finish here. The applications will now be online to be downloaded, or they can be picked up at Fire Station Number 4. Dates of all the events will be posted at time of application. Before, the date for the test was given out, but the applicant didn't really know when the physical aptitude test would be and so forth. So we're going to publish all those dates so they can put on their calendar, this date is for the test, this date will be for the physical ability, so forth. The cost of the exam, we lowered it from $25 to $15, and payment can now be by check, where before we did not accept a check. The qualification changes we made, and this is probably where we're hoping to open it up to everybody and have a larger pool of applicants. The age limit is 18 to 38 at the time of the written exam, not higher. So if you're 38 when you take the test, that's all that matters. You can be 39 or 40 by the time you're hired, but as long as you were 38 taking the test, you're eligible. Applicants must have either an EMTB certificate or a State of Ohio FF1 certificate. Currently, we required applicants to have both to take the test. This way it's or. So if somebody has a EMTB certificate, they can take the test. They do well on it, and they say, I want to do this, they can pursue their FF1. If they're a firefighter 1 and they're currently in EMT school at Owens and they haven't graduated yet, but they're in the process, they can still take the test. So what we're hoping is that we'll have a larger pool of people that will take the test. When there's an opening on the list, 15 of the qualified applicants, based on their test scores, will be interviewed, and when there's more than one, 20 applicants will be interviewed. This is, we're greatly expanding the number of applicants to be interviewed, and we hope this will help.
Who's doing the interviewing?
I'll get to that next. The interview will be a panel of 4, the fire chief and 2 designees by him, and the HR director, which is new, will be on the panel. So we'll have 4 people on the panel, and one of them will be the HR director. All applicants determined to be a finalist after the interview will have a background check. We're changing that procedure in that currently, in our background check, there's a list of points that applicants can get for felony convictions, bad checks, domestic violence, whatever. We're doing away with the point system because before, if they got 5 points, they were automatically disqualified. So under the new procedures, all the background checks will go to the prosecutor's office and not the fire department as it currently is. The results will stay with the prosecutor's office for confidentiality, so nobody will know what's on those background checks other than the prosecutor. And the prosecutor will evaluate the background checks and will inform the township as whether an applicant passed or failed the background check. There is an appeal process for an applicant that failed to check. So if the applicant feels that he was disqualified for something that wasn't true or for some other reason, he has an appeal right to that. And once again, that will be through the prosecutor. And only the prosecutor will have the results of the background check. So nobody at the fire department will know what's on an applicant's background. Once again, this is for confidentiality. And the prosecutor will look at the background checks just for if this person can be a firefighter or not. And we've talked with John on that, and they're going to do that. Any applicant that passes the background check will be eligible to be hired. So of that 15, let's just say there's one opening, of that 15 that were interviewed, I'll just throw a number, 12 passed the background check. Any one of those 12 then are eligible to be hired. And the chief would discuss with the township administrator, myself, before asking approval for the trustees. So we would discuss the person that the chief recommends before this was not done, and it's another step in the procedures where the administrator will have to agree with the chief for the hire. And one thing to make sure that we keep the quality of our fire department, at the time of hire, now this is when the person's actually hired, he must have the EMT, paramedic, and the State of Ohio FF1 certificate. Now that could be up to 2 years after the test. So in those 2 years, if that person gets whatever he needs to have both those, he's then eligible to be hired. Where before, as I said, he had to have that when he took the test. And so once again, we think that's opening up the program to many more people. I heard and I talked to somebody that currently now at Owens Tech, about almost 50% of the people in the EMT class are females.
And yet we don't have one.
Right. But they'll now be eligible to take the test, where before, if they weren't a firefighter, they weren't. So we're hoping that opens up the process to many more people.
How many people were hired in the last 4 years?
4.
So that's the procedure that we're instituting. It's written out in the papers I gave you, and what I just talked about is the highlight of it. If there's any discussion, feel free to. If not, if you're comfortable with this procedure, and we can postpone this if you don't want to do it tonight, I'm asking for permission just to advertise, go out and advertise for a new firefighter applicants to start the process for the certification of the list.
I do have one question for John Burrell. John, do you mind coming up, please?
Be moving so slow, I
Yeah.
sometimes forget I'm not 25 anymore, and I twisted my back climbing up a ladder.
Oh, boy.
So,
Well,
even though I
there's a
prefer not to.
lesson to that. Hey, John, could you introduce yourself and your name and address?
Sure, I'm John Burrell, I'm an assistant prosecutor with the Lucas County Prosecutor's Office, and of course, our office is your law director. I am one of, I think there's 6 of us that do a variety of township work. And I've been working with John as another assistant prosecutor, is working with John and Susan in revamping the hiring procedures.
I guess, but my question or comment is, what we're doing is, just like any business, just like any operation, you're looking at bettering doing a better job. And not that we're doing a bad job,
Well, we
help me
are.
out. John,
I will say right now, we're doing a terrible job.
You can interrupt me after I'm done
Okay.
asking the question.
Well-
John, as far as you know, are we complying by the rules and regulations of what we have? And tell me, we're tweaking a system just like we tweak our budgets at home, just like I tweak my business? We're constantly changing, trying to get better. So tell me, how are we done in the past and where are we going in the future?
The first thing I looked at is, and I'm aware that there were no women or minorities currently in the department anyway, so the first thing we took a look at was, are the current hiring practices, do they comply with all the applicable state and federal laws? And we think they do. Their hiring practices, their standards, they follow the National Fire Protection Association. And if you know NFPA, when Moses came down with the Bible, the NFPA was right behind him. I mean, everything fire is everyone uses the NFPA standards, and that's essentially what your fire department does. Their recruiting practices, everything they do complies with federal law. But, as you said, and we all are aware that there are no minorities and women, so what John and Susan want to do is look at ways to expand essentially the pool so that you have more applicants feeding into the pool, but at the same time keeping the high quality that you want of our firefighters. So some of the things John talked about, like there's a lot of firefighters training at Owens, things like that, advertising in places where you may find more minorities and women, looking at making it a little bit easier to apply, but at the same time still keeping the standards when it came down to the actual hiring. And hopefully, by expanding the pool, you'll expand the number of women and minorities who are interested in the fire department. Now, when you only have basically one opening a year, obviously, there's no turnover, so it takes an awfully long time to make any kind of changes. And there's no guarantee, of course, that if you expand the pool, they'll actually end up being hired. We looked at, Susan had a list of, I think it was 15 women who applied. It was either 2011 or 2013. The vast majority of those women gave up the process. They didn't even follow through.
How many numbers was that, John?
I think there were 15 altogether. Wasn't it 15, John? 15. And
okay.
I think when it came down to the final end, there was only one left, and she failed the physical, I believe. So there isn't anything you can do about people who lose interest or aren't qualified.
I think we've got a problem if the township right below us, Springfield, has 50% women. I mean, what is with our process that people are dropping out before we even get to it? I mean, do we think that there's some sort of bias or some sort of, I don't know, but I can tell you, it's concerning.
Well,
I work with numbers and statistics all day, and none in 5, it's doable. None in 69, there's something wrong.
Well, and that's why I think we were interested in expanding the process, so the more minorities and women feed into the process.
Does Springfield Township on their hiring practice?
Not on their hiring practices.
And we didn't go to ask them to see what they're doing and how they're getting it better than us, or?
That's a good point, though. We can actually do that. In fact, now that you said that, I will call in the morning and see if they're doing something drastically different. I don't know what they're doing.
The females at Springfield are paramedics, sir. They run the paramedic, they ride the paramedic rig. They're not firefighters.
They're on the firefighting staff?
As paramedics.
Okay.
But I will call, though. I'd be interested in, now that you say that. I could go and see if they're doing something differently than we're doing. But hopefully, with some of these changes, the pool will be greatly expanded, and you can...
Well, you made me a little nervous, John, because when the media was calling me, because once somebody called the media, I was concerned that we haven't been doing things properly, illegally or anything wrongly. And we're just fine-tuning our operations. We're opening, we're getting better at what we do, and what we've been doing is according to the guidelines.
Yeah, I find nothing illegal. The fact that you're
Okay,
Mr. Mahoney, we don't know if we did anything wrong.
Well,
I mean, I'd like to know of the 15 that were disqualified, let's take a look at their backgrounds checks. 80% of them were discarded through that, wasn't it? Let's see if they were treated equally with the regular.
Anyway, would you like to have some...
Okay, Mr. Rand, hey, whoa, stop, sir, please. This is discussion up here. I appreciate your comment. I appreciate your comment, but just, it's not a good time to say it, okay? Just relax a second, please, Mr. Rand. I do want to ask you one question, John. We hire you as our legal counsel, okay? We pay you, your county, to represent us in a lot of different areas. When you, as our attorney, is telling us that we're doing things legally, I'm not an attorney, so I'm going to take your word for the fact that we're doing things right.
Have you looked into the things that I just questioned in going back?
we looked into the 15 women. Susan had a list, and it wasn't that we disqualified them. All but one, I mean, they disqualified themselves by just like not showing up for the test, not showing up for the physical. Some didn't pass the physical. I mean, I think the one who made it through the system didn't pass the physical. Well, no amount of tinkering is going to, if they don't have the basic qualifications, whether it be man or woman, obviously they can't be firefighters. So the problem, and I was very surprised when I saw that, most of that was there on the candidate's own initiative. They just did not decide to go through the process, for whatever reason.
Okay.
And some of the concerns we had is if you open up too wide, you don't have that many openings. You don't want to get, 3,000 people, 99% of them won't be qualified. So we tried to balance between a system that will make it easier to apply, but on the same time, not make it so easy that we're going to have people that will never, ever be qualified. Right. And I think it is, there's no doubt when you see not only fire department, any department that doesn't have any minorities or women, and that's why, we got called into it. You want to take a look at it to make sure everything is being done properly. And had I seen anything that I would consider illegal or discriminatory, believe me, you would have heard about it by now, because I got a little...
When you looked at it.
We looked at everything they did. I read, we went through all the NFPA standards, compared to what the township did. We spent a lot of time out here with Susan and John going through all the process, making sure we understood exactly what was being done. how hiring is being done, all of that. And believe me, if I thought there was some discrimination, like, you never know what's in someone's mind, obviously, but if I thought, looking at the process, there was something in there that even could be construed as discriminatory, I would have said that, because that is not something I certainly want the township to get involved in. Now, you have a result that you think, we want to change that result. We don't want, we want to try to expand as much, and that's what they're doing. They're trying to do that, trying to do as best we can. But again, with basically 4 and 4 years, so 1 a year, that is going to be a long change to have any kind of a significant impact, no matter what you do, because there's no, I think to the department's credit, there's very little turnover, which is good. You don't want a lot of turnover. But as a result of that, if there's going to be a change, no matter what we do, it's going to take a long time to do it. Unless all of a sudden we have a lot of retirees. But it's a very good department, and that's what we want to make sure. We don't want to just hire people who aren't qualified. So that's the balance we had. Get more people in, but don't lower the qualifications. And if you follow the NFPA standards, which this department does, which all departments do really, you're not going to go wrong either legally or in the kind of people you hire, because those are, the NFPA standards have standards for everything fires, everything to do with fire service, and that's what everyone follows. Yeah, John.
Well, my question's for Zeigler. Thanks.
Thanks, John.
Thank you all. I'm assuming, John, you're not part of, you said the chief points to and then our
HR
person.
Right.
But you're not a part of it, too.
Not of the...
Review of the chief's...
Right.
Gotcha.
I'm not on the...
And then is this, you've given us a lot of information. I'd like to read through this. If we delay this decision, is that hurting us, Chief, right now? For the next meeting? I'd just like the chance to...
No, that's, I understand.
I'm voting on something.
Right. Right.
All the attachments.
Our goal is to get this in place as soon as possible, once the trustees feel comfortable. And I'm hoping the process will get us the new packet and the new hiring policy will be in place, I hope, by September.
Sure. And how long have you guys been working on this? I'm not sure I know.
6 weeks, maybe, actually working on it, probably 6 weeks? 6 weeks.
6 weeks.
Thank you.
I have emails way back in April, and prior to that, kind of...
To answer his question, is how long have we actually been working with John Burrow on this? We knew we had to change back when, April, when those emails were. But the actual...
The fire department for 5 months, you didn't notice that when you did it, and you didn't notice everybody in the house was white.
Yes, I did notice.
Let's go, that's a path I don't want to touch publicly.
I did notice.
You could do it, you could do it when WTO interviews you, but I'm not going to go down this path.
I didn't call the media.
We've heard from John Burrell, our attorney. I'm comfortable with where we're at and continue to become better at what we do. So let's move on to the next piece of...
When the agenda wasn't available, Neil, I think the media started to call people to find out what was going on. And again, that was
Sure.
good coincidence.
Sure is. All right.
We've already done, we'll postpone item number 6 to the next meeting once you have time to look it over. We've done item number 7, which is renewal, so I'll turn over to Mr. Simcoe for fiscal officer.
Did you get there it is, a month-end analysis, and there's really not much to say. The expenditures should be at 41.6, and they're slightly, below that in each one of the departments, and of course, we always like to see that, and that's what we always really focus on. And our revenues are fine too, so there really isn't anything to say. The numbers are all good, and so it's kind of I guess a boring report, but that's not bad, and that's good in this instance. So I don't have anything else to add to it. This is a question.
Do we have anything for open discussion tonight? Now, Mr. Ramp, come on up if you'd like. Mr. Ram, if you could just explain your name and address, please.
Bert Ram, I'm Wilford Road.
Sorry to bother you. Address, Wolford address,
3142, the incident report, remember?
3142.
Yeah. I was just going to say that I'm a retired deputy chief in the part-time program of Savigny Township, and the criticizing and the negativity is just driving me crazy. You got it when you start these changes and these minorities and stuff, this is fine, but I don't want somebody jumping out that rescue squad and had to take the test, the first aid test, 10 times. I don't want them working on me. So if they pass the test and that's fine and dandy.
Well, first
Not
of all,
just start throwing them in there, because that's not right.
So nobody ever insinuated that. I think, like I said, I deal in numbers and statistics all day long.
You just told them they weren't doing a good job, but they're working on that program. Give them a chance. Why don't you jump in and help them?
Sure,
Your negativity since you've been in here, maybe we ought to...
okay, that's it. Let's not go down that path.
That's
Thank you for your service, though, Mr. Ram, and your volunteering. Appreciate it. I guess let's go into executive session to discuss the fire department.
Personnel, in the fire department.
Personnel, fire department.
At
Got a motion?
Sorry, it's 6:45.
I'll second it.
Okay, I'll call the roll. Mr. Genowine?
Yes.
Mr. Crandall?
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes. Doesn't DJ Jill Jurek live on your street? Well, you go to the end of your street and you take a right,
Oh, yeah, okay.
and then Jim White's on your street.
Yeah, Jim
Phil
White.
Johnson.
Yeah, Johnson, yeah.
All right.
I'll move we come out of executive session at 7:35.
Second?
Mr. Crandall?
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Mr. Genowine?
Yes.
Yes, I'd like to offer a resolution authorizing the chief to promote one of his firefighters to lieutenant from the lieutenant list that is currently in effect, and to hire one new firefighter for the retirement, which would keep our staff at 56.
Do you have a reso number?
What's our next reso?
74.
Is that the one that Jennifer applied for?
That's the one that we had written up a couple months ago.
15-70?
That would go for,
74.
that's what I have.
15-74.
Okay, I'll move resolution 15-74 to promote a lieutenant and hire one additional firefighter.
John, you second that?
Yes.
Okay. I'll call the roll. Mr. Genowine?
Yes.
Mr. Crandall?
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
And that's all we have?
Shut her down, Neil.
Yeah, good.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn at, thanks, John, 7:36.
Second.
Call the roll. Mr. Genowine?
Yes.
Mr. Crandall?
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right.